What's your biggest concern? What keeps you up at night?
My future.
It's an election year like no other in a district that has a history of close election night calls. And once again, the eyes of Texas and the nation are set upon what may happen in the 23rd Congressional District. No incumbent, 29 counties, 2 people who have never held elected office before. For one of them, that will change on November 3rd. 800 miles of border separates 2 countries, and tonight in Uvalde, 2 candidates square off for the first time, fighting for critical votes that could swing.
I'm going to be a voice for the people.
The swingiest of districts.
Look, I've never been one to back down from a fight.
This is the KSAT debate, the 23rd Congressional District. It's almost decision time.
Welcome to Uvalde, an hour and a half west of San Antonio in the heart of District 23 and home to Southwest Texas Junior College. Our host for the night, along with Sul Ross State University. We appreciate their help in what will be a debate like no other in history, thanks to the coronavirus pandemic. As we said in the open, this district is large and diverse, roughly from the northwest side of San Antonio all the way to the border, and then west almost to El Paso. One of the major issues laid out by both candidates, and seemingly one of their biggest differences, is on health care. We'll dive into those differences. But by far, the biggest concern I heard from the people we talked to in the district was about COVID-19. The fear and questions surrounding the pandemic we are all in have not gone away. Fear over the health of loved ones, the economy, and the world we live in. Questions over what comes next, and are we doing enough? Good evening and welcome to Uvalde, Southwest Texas Junior College and Sul Ross State University's satellite location here in Uvalde. I'm Steve Spriester, and right off the bat, I want to explain that this is a year like no other, this is an election like no other, and this is a debate like no other. We are here in a mostly empty auditorium. The pandemic has kind of required that. And you might notice center stage is an 8 by 12 foot plexiglass wall. So part of what we're going to do tonight is politics through the plexiglass. We only have our photographers in this auditorium. We are following strict protocols. The 3 of us are on stage, the 2 candidates and myself, and people from Southwest Texas Junior College. We are thrilled, though, to be bringing this to you, as I said off the top, from the heart of District 23. I also want to say we have timekeeper Sandra Ibarra, who is to my right. She's going to be keeping time. She's from this area, so Sandra, I'm glad we could cut down on your commute. Let's meet the candidates right now. 2 people who want to take over the office currently held by Congressman Will Hurd. He chose not to run for re-election. First, Democrat Gina Ortiz Jones, who among her endorsements, former vice president and current presidential nominee of the Democratic Party, Joe Biden. Her opponent, Republican Tony Gonzales, who is backed by our current president, Donald Trump. Tonight, these 2 square off for the first time face-to-face. I want to again welcome Gina Ortiz Jones and Tony Gonzales. Thank you both for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The debate is fairly simple. I've gone over the rules with both of the campaigns. I will be giving all the questions, but we do have questions submitted online and on camera from viewers and people we talk to right here in Uvalde. For most of the questions, the respondents will each have 1 minute to answer, and then I, as moderator, have the option to expand on those answers with 30-second allotments for the candidates to answer. We will have a rapid response round where each candidate will have 45 seconds to answer, and I again have discretion to expand on those answers or at any time to interrupt if I don't feel the question is being answered. We don't have opening statements, but we do have closing statements of 2 minutes. We flipped a coin to see who would go first, and Tony Gonzales won. So, Tony, you get the first question tonight, and you will give the first closing statement. The first question. Since we don't have opening statements, I want to know more about you as a person, not just you as a politician. So I'm going to ask each of you this first question. But again, Tony, I'm going to start with you. No rebuttal required. What is the biggest personal challenge that you have overcome to be on this stage tonight?
First off, tails never fails. So I'm glad to go first. I'm thankful for you, Steve, and KSAT for hosting this. I'm thankful for Dr. Gonzales, and I'm thankful for President Gallego out in Sol Ross for being a part of this. Really means a lot. For me, my life has never been easy. At 2 months old, I was abandoned by my father. 5 years old, I grew up in a battered women's shelter. I've lived on my own since I was 15 years old. I joined the Navy at 18 years old without a high school diploma. I came in as an E1. 20 years later, I retire as a Master Chief, an E9, and now I'm finishing up my PhD. This race for me is about the American dream. No matter where you start in life, you can do and you can be anything. Doesn't matter the color of your skin. Doesn't matter if you come from a small town or a big city. This is America, and here we can do anything.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzales. Gina Ortiz Jones, you get the same question. No rebuttal required again. What is the biggest personal challenge you have overcome to be on the stage tonight?
Well, Steve, thank you for hosting us, and thank you at home for joining us this evening. And I want to express my prayers to those of you that are still suffering during this pandemic and economic crisis. My story starts over 40 years ago when my mom came to this country chasing the American dream. And she reminded my sister and I every single day that we were just so lucky to be born in this country. We'd have to give back to a country that gave us so much. It's why I served. It's why my sister serves in the Navy to this day. And it's why I am in this fight for working families. And that starts with quality, affordable health care. You know, I know the opportunities that allowed me to grow up healthy, get an education, and serve our country. I'm in this fight to make sure every working family has the same fighting chance that I had. We are at our best when we invest in people, we invest in the most vulnerable. I've seen firsthand the importance of American leadership, the indispensability of it, and that's why I'm in this race, to make sure we get our country back on the right track.
Thank you. I want to get right to some questions our viewers have, but also issues that have been front and center in both of your advertisements that we see quite often on television, on radio, in the newspaper. For both candidates, this question is from KSAT viewer Wanda. And Gina Ortiz Jones, you get this question. Where do you live now, and how long have you lived there?
Sure. I am a proud product of 78245. I went to Adams Hill Elementary School, Pease Middle School, John Jay High School, First Communion at St. Rose, Altar Server at St. Rose. I am proud to be a product of San Antonio. I am proud to have also served our country, working to protect our national and economic security for almost 15 years. And I came back to take care of my mom when she was diagnosed with colon cancer in 2006. And I was proud to work at Fort Sam Houston at the time. I live in the home that I grew up in Heritage. I'm very proud, again, of the community that has invested in me. And in 2016, during that, based on the election, I knew I had to make sure that my community was well represented, protect the opportunities that allowed me to grow up healthy, get an education, and serve our country. So I came back in 2017 to make sure my community was well represented.
Thank you. Tony Gonzales, same question for you. Where do you live now, and how long have you lived there?
Yeah, I spent some time growing up not too far from here in Camp Wood Hills, small town. You know, I live in San Antonio, and I'm raising my family there. My wife Angel and I are raising our 6 children there, and that's important. This district deserves somebody who's going to roll up their sleeves and go to work every single day. This is an issue where my opponent and I differ. Look, these are the facts. She has property in Washington, D.C. These are the facts. She claimed a homestead in Washington, D.C. These are the facts. She does not visit the district. In the past week, I visited 14 out of the 29 counties. The people of District 23 deserve a representative that's going to roll up their sleeves and go to work, not a virtual representative that they're never going to see.
All right. Gina, obviously,
Sure.
Gina Ortiz Jones, I want to give you some rebuttal time on the charges that he made, that you have properties not here, that you don't have a homestead exemption here.
Well, look, I am proud to have served our country for almost 15 years. And when my country asked me to go to Iraq, I went. When they asked me to work in Germany, I went. When they asked me to work at Fort Leavenworth, I went. And when the Defense Intelligence Agency assigned me to Washington, D.C., I also went. I am proud to serve our country. I look forward to bringing those experiences in service to this district. My opponent knows better. My opponent was also assigned to D.C. My opponent also owns property out of the state. So, again, this is Tony Gonzales doing and saying whatever he thinks will get him to Congress.
I'm going to move on. Let's go to the next question now. And Mr. Gonzales, this is for you. If you are chosen to represent District 23, you're going to represent a rich and diverse area. I'm going to give this to both, but I'm going to start with you.
Sure.
Diverse in landscape, beliefs, but also diverse in race. The next question has to do with the last presidential debate and a story that was in the Huffington Post and on KSAT.com about what seemed to be a reluctance to call the KKK to be designated as a terrorist group by you, Mr. Gonzales. During an Instagram interview, I want to give you the opportunity to set the record straight right here, right now. Do you condemn white supremacists, including the so-called Proud Boys and the KKK? And did President Trump make a mistake by not clearly doing so in the first presidential debate?
So I've served 20 years in the military. This is my first time running for office. And what I've learned is politics is ridiculous. To ask a Mexican American, oh, by the way, the only Hispanic in this race, if I condemn the KKK, of course I condemn the KKK. Of course I condemn terrorist organizations like MS-13 and Antifa. Can my opponent say the same thing? This is about the district. Don't get distracted. This is about the people of District 23, a district that is 70% Hispanic, that varies regardless from rural to urban and everything in between, that focuses on agriculture, that focuses on oil and gas. You know, is race an issue? Yes. But we shouldn't be talking about this. We should be talking about the people that are dying of COVID, the families that are broken.
I want to answer, you had a question. You said you condemned the white supremacist organizations, and you called on Gina Ortiz-Jones to condemn Antifa, and what was the other group that you mentioned?
MS-13.
MS-13. I'm going to ask you that question.
Look, the KKK is a terrorist organization, and it's unfortunate that my opponent struggled to answer that very basic question. But again, this is about Tony Gonzales doing whatever he thinks is going to get him to Congress. So whether, you know, he hedges on saying a very basic fact like that, or when he says that when he actually says he's going to eliminate the ACA and its protections for people with pre-existing conditions during a pandemic. Right? If you want to talk about being out of touch with this district, that taking somebody's health care away during a pandemic, and then, oh, by the way, when we can have the opportunity to help working families and help them get back on their feet, what does Tony Gonzales say? We can't give working families more help. They'll just stay at home and watch Netflix. That is so insulting to working families, single moms trying to take care of their kids, put food on the table. I will care about those families. You know why? Because that was my family. So Tony Gonzales is out of touch. He's willing to take away your health care, willing to insult you at the same time.
With all due respect, we're going to get to health care, but I do want you to answer the question that was posed to you. Do you condemn Antifa and MS-13?
Absolutely. I think any organization that engages in political violence like that should be condemned. Absolutely.
All right, we're going to get to health care. We're going to talk about health care, but yeah, I'll give you 30 seconds.
Here's the thing. A year ago, I died. I struggle with pre-existing conditions every day. I will always fight for those that are struggling with pre-existing conditions. My opponent will lie, steal, and cheat. This is the difference between the two of us. It took her over a minute to oppose Antifa. I support law and order. There's going to be a lot of differences.
We'll get to some law and order questions a little bit later, but let's get to some of the questions that we heard on campus. Last week, photographer Eddie Latigo and I talked to people on campus here to hear from the voters, to see what are the topics that mean the most to them. What are their concerns? What keeps them up at night? You're going to hear their concerns throughout tonight's debate, and we're going to begin first with the pursuit of scientific truth. Listen.
You know, although there are many issues affecting this country, I think one that is fundamental to them all is science and its quest for the emerging truth. Nowadays, we see that there's a denial of scientific evidence and scientific truths, and that happens even at the highest levels of government. So that's one thing that kind of keeps me up at night, is that attitude towards science and what it seeks to do.
Ms. Ortiz-Jones, I want to give you this question first. Dr. Ayala's question is, will you follow the science? If it's COVID-19 or climate change or pollution, and the science doesn't line up with what your political party believes, in this case, the Democratic Party, what would you do?
Absolutely. Well, look, my entire career has been in service to our country, protecting our economic and our national security. First as an intelligence officer in the Air Force, and then working as a civil servant. And it has always been about putting country above everything else. I have a long record of doing that. I look forward to doing that in service to this district. We absolutely need to be listening to our medical experts. And when they say wear a mask, minimize your activity outside of your home, practice social distancing, practice good hygiene, we should absolutely do that. That's how we get this pandemic under control. That's how we get our economy back open. Unfortunately, my opponent has put his political ambitions over the medical guidance of these experts. Over the last couple of months, he has been holding indoor activities, maskless, right? Again, putting his political ambitions above our health, above our ability to safely open up the economy. But for Tony Gonzales, this is just about getting to Congress, and he's willing to sacrifice anyone and our economy to get there.
Mr. Gonzales, I want to ask you the same question that Dr. Ayala asked us here on campus about science. Will you follow the science if it's COVID-19 or climate change or pollution, and the science doesn't line up with what your political party, in your case the Republican Party, believes or is espousing? What would you do?
Thank you, Dr. Ayala, for that question. And the answer is yes. You know, my opponent is a liberal left Democrat. Her first vote in office is going to be to elect Nancy Pelosi as the next Speaker in the House. That's her first vote. Me, on the other hand, I believe in this district. This is about the people of District 23, not a party, not a president, not a speaker, the people of District 23. And yes, I've made my way around this district time and time again. And guess what? I've done it safely with a mask and with sanitizer and social distancing. Here's the thing. Our nation needs to get back to work. We need to get back to school. We need to get back to church, and we need to open up our border with Mexico for economic purposes. The only way you know that is if you're in the district, not being a virtual representative.
All right. Ms. Ortiz-Jones, I want to give you 30-second rebuttal time to that.
Sure. Look, if you care about this district, that has been hit hard by COVID-19, San Antonio, Bexar County, we've had one of the highest COVID-19 related fatalities of any major area in the state. There are communities in this district right now that have a positivity rate 19%. And so we're going to have COVID-19 survivors. They need quality, affordable health care. And again, my opponent, you want to talk about being in touch with the district, people need quality, affordable health care. He wants to eliminate the ACA, the only thing right now that protects people from insurance companies kicking them off their coverage, jacking up their premiums if they have a pre-existing condition.
That's time. Steve, I got to respond to
this. Absolutely. Go ahead, Mr. Gonzales.
I have a pre-existing condition. Why would I take that away from myself? Like, I believe in protecting people with pre-existing conditions. I will always fight for that. You talk about communities that are hurting. Eagle Pass is hurting. This morning, I was in Eagle Pass at a food distribution event, and the lines were as far as the eye can see. People are hurting, and they need help.
And we will get to questions about COVID and the economy and the health and pre-existing conditions, hopefully, if we have enough time, coming up. But right now, I want to get to our next question from campus.
My biggest concern is probably this balancing act that needs to be performed between the safety of our citizens in COVID and the economic consequences of those safety measures. And so what keeps me up at night is it going to go off the rails one way or the other? And I know it's an extremely tough and difficult position for politicians to be in, but there is a balancing act, and I think both of those sides have to be considered as opposed to just one side or the other.
Yeah, Richard's question is all about COVID-19 and balance. How do we balance the safety of people in the district versus the economic impact of COVID closures? How do we not put people at risk but still open up and grow the economy? Mr. Gonzales, you get this question first.
Thank you, Richard, for that question. Look, everybody is hurting, and we have to get back to work. We have to. It's the way we solve our economic problems. The way we do that is we come together. This isn't about being Republican or Democrat or independent. We are Americans. We are all hurting. COVID doesn't just pick a party. It picks everybody. Look, Maria, I was in El Paso a couple weeks ago. Maria is a U.S. citizen. She works as an executive assistant in El Paso. She lives in Juarez. Every morning, she has to get up 2 hours early to make it over the bridge. She works a full day, has to make it home, and it takes her an extra 2 hours to get home. That is wrong. We have to safely reopen our border for economic purposes for places like El Paso, Eagle Pass, Del Rio. That's one community. This is about Americans, not a party.
Gina Ortiz-Jones, how do you balance the safety of people in the district versus the economic impact of COVID closures? How do we not put people at risk but still open up and grow the economy?
Well, look, medical experts have said time and time again that the way that we open up the economy is by addressing this pandemic. And we still don't have a national testing strategy. We don't have enough contact tracers. We don't have enough PPE. So we need to start there so we can safely open up the economy. We need to get help to working families and small business owners. But again, when you've got an opponent like I do who is putting his political ambitions above the safety and health of our community, again, it shows you who his true loyalty is. And you're hearing tonight two very different visions. We're going to be dealing with COVID-19 for the foreseeable future. People need quality, affordable health care. My opponent, again, supports eliminating the ACA and its protections for people with pre-existing conditions like COVID-19. I think that's wrong during a pandemic and economic crisis, and it shows you that he is willing to do anything, take away someone's health care during a pandemic, if that means it gets him to Congress.
But he's saying he's not against eliminating pre-existing conditions. Okay. I mean, you've been very clear about it. I'll let you with the 30-second rebuttal.
Yeah, beyond that, look, my loyalty is to this district. Why? Because I'm the only candidate that owns property in Texas. I love District 23. And here's the thing, places like El Paso, they've lost $268 million of retail revenue because of that closed border. Now, my opponent would know that if she ever traveled the district, but she doesn't.
Gina Ortiz-Jones, I want to give you 30 seconds of rebuttal time there, too.
If you want to know how much Tony Gonzales cares about your health and your health care, go to his website. Look under the issues page. You know what you're not going to see there? Anything about health care, because he doesn't have a plan. He has been running for 500 days. He's been asked repeatedly, what is your plan since you want to eliminate the ACA, the only thing protecting people with pre-existing conditions from insurance companies, denying them coverage or jacking up their premiums? He doesn't have an answer. All he does is attack me. I think that's ridiculous. We need quality, affordable health care.
All right, let's move on because we're going to get into health care, I hope, if we keep the time to a minimum here. Let's go to our next campus question from a student here at Southwest Texas Junior College.
My mom is a teacher at Morales Junior High, and she has diabetes, so she's at really high risk for if she catches COVID, her mortality rate is higher than the average population. So I've been really worried about reopening schools specifically. And I know from her talking about, because they're doing like flex classes where some students are in person here and some students are online. I don't know, she's talked about it just being a mess so far. So I'm concerned about the reopening of schools.
Caitlin's a student here at Southwest Texas Junior College. She asks, what about education in a pandemic? Are we doing enough to protect teachers and students? Do they have the proper resources? Should schools even be open right now? Gina Ortiz-Jones, you get this question first.
Well, thank you for the question. And, you know, public education is personal for me. Not only am I a proud product of public education, I'm the daughter of a public educator. And I know public education is the great equalizer in our country. And it's so important that we get our young students and our teachers back into the classroom as safely as possible. And it's unfortunate that from the administration to the state level that we have had leaders denying, delaying, and distracting. My opponent, in fact, in April said that President Trump was doing a fantastic job. And we see where that has gotten us. Again, Tony is going to say and do whatever he thinks will get him to Congress. We need to make sure we have adequate testing, contact tracing, so our students can get back in the classroom, and so we can make sure that we safely open up our economy and ensure that our kids are receiving the quality education that they deserve.
Thank you. Tony Gonzales, what about education in a pandemic? Are we doing enough to protect teachers and students? Do they have the proper resources? Should schools even be open right now?
Education is everything to our country. We need to invest in education. You know, I'm a proud product of public school. I have 6 children. My children have gone to public school, private school, homeschool, religious schools, and charter schools. We've done it all. And we have to do it safely. You know, my 6-year-old Emmanuel just had a birthday last week. You know, he went to school. He's in pre-K. He did his first day earlier this week. And we were as excited as can be. Why? Because school is exciting. Our children need to go to school because it's more than just education. It's social interaction. It's development. It's nutrition. It's healthcare. It's all of it. And we have to get back to school. We can do it safely. We have to do it together. We have to listen to experts. We have to respect one another.
All right, let's move on to the next topic right now and our next campus question.
What is something that you're worried about, something that may keep you up at night?
I would say veterans getting the disability that they need. My husband and myself are both veterans. You know, he does have service-related injuries that he cannot get the disability that he needs. And I have disability as well. And also my brother-in-law, who has had 8 surgeries in total, 6 back and 2 hip, 1 hip replacement. He has been trying to get disability since 2012, and he has been denied 3 times.
Sierra Ibarra talked to us here on campus, and she is a veteran, so is her husband. They're having trouble getting disability. She has relatives that are having trouble getting disability. Mr. Gonzales, this question is for you. We've received a similar question from a KSAT viewer. Quote, this is from the viewer, veterans yourselves, and as a military brat and dependent myself, and from a family filled with veterans, I see veteran benefits getting cut more and more. Will you fight to protect veteran benefits?
I will absolutely fight for veterans. I served 20 years in the military. I served in Iraq. I served in Afghanistan. And it's not just about the veterans. It's about their families, the sacrifices that our brave men and women make every single day. Look, I'm proud to help, when I served on Capitol Hill, to help as a fellow, to help pass the VA Accountability Act. And what that did, it allowed us to fire bureaucrats that weren't doing their job. Imagine that. We need a law to do that. When in office, I will be a voice for veterans. My opponent, you know, I appreciate her service. She has claimed her time in service was a job. Serving in the military isn't a job, I'm afraid. It is a duty. It is a service. Anyone that serves, if you're in the military, if you're a police officer, if you're a Border Patrol agent, you believe in service. It's not a job.
Gina Ortiz-Jones, the same question to you. Veteran benefits, this viewer and one of the students here on campus says she sees them getting cut more and more. Will you fight to protect veteran benefits?
Absolutely. I'm a proud Air Force veteran, proud Iraq veteran. I know exactly how important it is that we keep the promise our country made to my fellow brothers and sisters in arms. I get my own care through the VA, and I absolutely know that there are some improvements that can be made there. And I look forward to working with anyone on whatever side of the aisle to make sure that we get that done and make sure, for example, that we bring better veteran VA services to our veterans living in rural communities. My opponent, again, supports eliminating the ACA, and one of the consequences of that is it eliminates protections for people with pre-existing conditions. That's 500K veterans to whom that would apply. And I don't need to be lectured by Tony Gonzales on what duty means. Tony Gonzales was silent when this president insulted our fallen heroes, called them suckers and losers. So excuse me if I don't have faith in Tony Gonzales' ability to stand up for our veterans when he can't even stand up for our fallen heroes.
Tony Gonzales, I want to let you respond to that.
Ms. Jones, please stop with the mentiras. Stop lying. I've already said it, I'll say it again. I have a pre-existing condition. I will always fight for those with pre-existing conditions. This is about veterans, and I love veterans. I wear this bracelet. It says, do not give in to the war within, because the VA is broken, and we need somebody that's going to fight for it, and that starts with mental health awareness and more resources for mental health.
With all due respect, she asked you about the statements that the president allegedly made about calling veterans suckers, losers. He's been very critical of John McCain and his time, the late senator from Arizona. You have not made a public statement about those words. Will you make one right now?
Absolutely. Look, this isn't about a president. This is about the district. And I don't always agree with the president. And I don't appreciate the president attacking veterans. I will always defend and fight for veterans.
All right, let's move on. We're going to talk about health care right now, because that started with health care. It leads us into a topic that both of you have hit hard on in your commercials and during this debate so far. We heard from a lot of people concerned about protecting coverage for those with pre-existing conditions. If the Affordable Care Act is repealed by the Supreme Court, what will you do to ensure Texans are provided affordable health care that covers pre-existing conditions? I want specifics here. What will you do to protect people with pre-existing conditions? Gina Ortiz-Jones, this question goes to you first.
Healthcare is so personal to me. It was healthcare that saved my mom's life when she was diagnosed with colon cancer. And I had just come back from my deployment, and I will never forget standing in her kitchen when she told me she was diagnosed with colon cancer. The fear that I could lose my mom, the fear that that could bankrupt us. And I want to make sure that everyone has access to the same quality care that my mom did, allowed her to beat cancer and be with us today. And again, this comes down to people having access to quality, affordable health care. That's why I support protecting and expanding the ACA and including a public option. My opponent wants to eliminate the ACA and its protections for people with pre-existing conditions. Coronavirus survivors, cancer survivors like my mom, folks with diabetes, folks with asthma. And it's so unfortunate that during a pandemic, my opponent supports that lawsuit that would take away health care during a pandemic. It shows you that he will do anything if he thinks it'll help him get to Congress.
Time's up. Mr. Gonzales, the same question to you. If the Affordable Care Act is repealed by the Supreme Court, what will you do to ensure Texans are provided affordable health care that covers pre-existing conditions? Be specific about what your plan is.
Absolutely. So, I keep hearing this from my opponent, and there's a term in Spanish, sin vergüenza, right? Without honor, stop with the lies. This is about this is about the people of District 23. To me, this is about increasing access. It's about improving the quality of care. And what will I do? I will ensure ACA is broken. As I've made my way around the district, I hear that time and time again, right, from rural hospitals, right? It is broken, right? She wants to take away private insurance for millions of people. That's wrong. I believe in increased funding for community health centers. I believe in ensuring private practices are protected from lawsuits. And at the end of the day, this is about Americans coming together and solving one of the most difficult problem sets in our country, healthcare.
Well, Steve, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not heard of a health plan that covers pre-existing conditions that's not the Affordable Care Act. I mean, do you support the Supreme Court overthrowing the Affordable Care Act?
I support the next version of the Affordable Care Act to have pre-existing conditions embedded in it. That is important. This is what we have. We have a broken Congress. We have the left and we have the right that all they want to do is fight. And oh, by the way, my opponent is funded by dark liberal groups that fund her, that will be a left-leaning organization that are going to take away our health care.
All right. Gina Ortiz-Jones, I'll give you ample time here to answer those charges.
Yeah, so Steve, you've been unfortunately unsuccessful, as have many other reporters, in asking him how he's going to protect the 300,000 people in Texas 23 that have at least one pre-existing condition. How are you going to do it? He doesn't have a plan. He can't answer that question. And let's never forget, Washington Republicans have been talking about a replacement for 10 years. 10 years, they have no plan. It's this same empty promise, well, we're going to do it, we're going to do it, we're going to do it. At the same time, they want to eliminate the one thing between insurance companies and people with pre-existing conditions. Without the ACA, insurance company, we go back to a time where insurance companies could deny you coverage, jack up your premiums just because you have a pre-existing condition. I'm on the side of working families. I know exactly why this is so important. And Tony Gonzales continues to show that on the issue that is the most important to this district, to our country, he doesn't have a plan. He's focused on getting himself to Congress, and he'll take away your health care to do so.
Okay, Mr. Gonzales, do you have a plan to protect pre-existing conditions? Is there a plan I don't know of that protects pre-existing conditions?
ACA is broken, right? Everyone agrees on that. Everyone agrees on that. My opponent is for a government-funded, government-mandated health care, which is going to strip away private insurance. That is wrong. My plan includes...
We're talking about pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, my plan includes pre-existing conditions because I have one. Because men and women that have fought alongside me have pre-existing conditions. This is about taking care of people, not politics. I mean, over and over again, we see why our nation is broken. It's because people won't come together and solve our nation's problems.
All right, let's move on. I want to talk about the border now. We have a short time to cover a lot of issues tonight, and, a huge part of this district stretches along the border. Mr. Gonzales, this question's for you. Is a border wall a good idea? Are you in favor of making it easier to legally immigrate to this country? And how would you handle illegal immigration?
I was just on the border. I was in Eagle Pass a week and a half ago, and I did a tour with the Border Patrol agent. And it's amazing what our men and women in uniform do every day, right? Just earlier this week in Del Rio, our Border Patrol agents saved a young man's life that was trying to enter our country illegally, right? They do this every day, and they get no thanks for it. My plan includes this, right? A wall where it makes sense. Added resources to the men and women that are doing the job, DHS, ICE, Border Patrol, but that's not enough, right? We have to add technology to the equation. And at the end of the day, this is about legal immigration reform. Nobody wants to talk about it, but I've been pushing for legal immigration reform. I love nothing more than move the conversation from are you for the wall or against the wall to are you for the American dream? And oh, by the way, the American dream doesn't always start in America.
I will remind you, I did ask the question, are you in favor of making it easier to legally immigrate?
Absolutely.
So the process was part of this question. So I just wanted to point out that is part of this discussion as well. So I appreciate your answer. Gina Ortiz-Jones, are you in favor of a border wall? Are you in favor of making it easier to legally immigrate to this country? And how would you handle illegal immigration?
I'm a proud first-generation American. My mom, again, came to this country over 40 years ago. I know how special our country is, and I know it's important that we have immigration policies that reflect our values. And that's why I am so committed to making sure that we pass a clean DREAM Act. We put these young people who are American in every sense of the word on a path to citizenship. My opponent, he's changing it up tonight, but my opponent has said that he wants to finish the wall. Right? Finish the wall. That's a $15 billion waste on an ineffective border wall that we could obviously use those monies in a much different way. But let's also never forget that that border wall steals from our military bases. And when I talk to leaders on the border, they don't want a border wall. Half of the city's revenue in Eagle Pass is based on those 2 international bridges. So when I talk to leaders on the border, Del Rio, Eagle Pass, they want more bridges, right? They want infrastructure that is actually going to allow them to be economically competitive, because that's additional revenue for their streets and their schools and their hospitals.
All right, time is up. Yeah. Quickly on the question of the border wall.
Yes.
Do you think the border wall should be finished?
Yeah, my opponent says when she talks to people, via Zoom? I mean, this district deserves more.
We're talking about border here.
Yeah.
So give me are you in support of finishing the border wall?
Yeah, you have to actually visit the border to have a position on the border. You can't Zoom your way through being a representative. This is about the people of this district. I was just in Eagle Pass this morning. You know what I'd love for us to talk about? Creating a third bridge to build that economic opportunity between our 2 great countries of Texas and Mexico.
Time is up.
Well, look, the reality is we can't spend money on everything, right? And my opponent wants to spend $15 billion on a wasteful, ineffective border wall and steal from the military to do so. Steal from Camp Bullis, steal from Fort Bliss. We need to invest in our communities and make sure that we are working with law enforcement, with our Border Patrol, to make sure that our policies are effective as possible. Again, I think we should work with Border Patrol, not make them props in our commercials.
I have to briefly respond to that. I'm not going to steal money from the military. I'm a 20-year combat veteran. I believe in strengthening our bases, unlike my opponent who believes in BRAC, who wants to close bases down and will follow the party line of Nancy Pelosi.
We're going to talk about BRAC coming up and talk about protecting our bases coming up, and that's why I want to get right to our rapid response. Again, these questions are 45 seconds answers for each candidate. Hopefully no rebuttal, but I will grant one if needed. Let's move on to rapid response.
Is my time being put to good use for studying as a petroleum engineer? Because I'm not sure if I'm going to have a job once I graduate, probably in 2022. So am I really going to have a job by then? Am I going to be lost without a job? So that is my main concern.
That's a major concern for a lot of the college students across the board, and we heard that from Celso Gallego there. With unemployment continuing to rise, will there be jobs for college students when they graduate? And in this case, for Celso, he's studying petroleum engineering. He wants to know if there's a future in petroleum engineering for him. Gina Ortiz-Jones, you get this question first.
I think it's so important that we are committed to opening up our economy as safely as possible and making sure that our economic recovery is as inclusive as possible. And that starts with addressing the pandemic. And I want to make sure that Texas remains a leader when it comes to the energy sector, and in particular, clean energy. 25% of the country's wind energy is produced in our country. We are the 5th largest producer of solar. And so when it comes to clean energy and the energy sector, we've got to compete and lead, not get left behind. And that's why I want to invest in the additional infrastructure, advanced skills training that makes our region as competitive as possible, so we can bring those good-paying jobs to Texas 23 and remain the leader in the energy sector, rather, that we are and we should continue to be.
Mr. Gonzales, same question to you. With unemployment rising, so much uncertainty with COVID and other things, will there be jobs for college students when they graduate? And in this case, this particular gentleman is worried about petroleum engineering and the future of petroleum engineering.
Yeah, my candidacy is about free enterprise and limited government, bringing job opportunities to this district. And that starts by protecting the job opportunities we already have, by protecting the oil and gas industry that feeds so many families, throughout this district. My opponent is for a Green New Deal that will take those jobs away. I'm about the dignity of work, fighting hard every day for blue-collar Americans. I was just out in West Texas, and throughout the district, the echo is the same. We need help. We need jobs. We need to reopen the economy. We need to get things back going, and that starts by protecting our energy industry.
All right, so I want to ask you a question really quickly that he brought up. Are you in favor of the Green New Deal, Gina Ortiz-Jones?
I'm not in favor of the Green New Deal. I am in favor of us making the investments in clean energy that ensure we continue to lead. We're in Uvalde, right down the street, one of the largest solar farms in the entire state. You can't drive through West Texas without a wind farm or a solar farm. These are good paying jobs. We need to invest in people, invest in the infrastructure so we are competitive, invest in storage technology, invest in carbon capture, make sure that we are a leader when it comes to energy. We can't get left behind, and that's unfortunately what Tony Gonzales wants to happen.
All right, let's move on. The next question from a KSAT viewer, and it goes to you, Mr. Gonzales. Will you commit to protecting the area's military bases at all costs when and if another round of base closures is required? You brought up BRAC earlier. Elaborate on that. 45 seconds.
I love my brothers and sisters in uniform. I spent 20 years in the military. My family vaulted into the middle class because my grandfather was a World War II veteran. He worked at Kelly Air Force Base as an airplane electrician. And because of that, he vaulted us into the middle class. Well, guess what? Washington bureaucrats, just like my opponent, close Kelly. And all those jobs are gone. My opponent is on the record saying she believes the Pentagon has the best choice. To me, this isn't about a party. This is about a policy and the people of District 23. That's what I will fight for every day.
Gina Ortiz-Jones, will you commit to protecting the area's military bases at all costs when and if another round of base closures is required?
So I don't support closing military bases. My opponent knows this. I'm a proud Air Force veteran, Iraq War veteran. I trained at Lackland Air Force Base. My first assignment in the Air Force was Kelly Annex. I worked at Fort Sam Houston with U.S. Army South when I came back to help my mom when she was battling cancer. I've spent 13 years of my career working on a military base. I know exactly how important our military bases are to our national security. With my background, having worked in Iraq to the Executive Office of the President, I am best position to bring more military missions to this district. But again, my opponent supports building a $15 billion border wall that steals from the military to get it done. So my opponent should have to explain why he supports defunding military bases to build this wasteful border wall.
All right, Mr. Gonzales, I'll give you that question. Do you think you're defunding military bases by supporting the border wall? I
do not support that. I support the U.S. military. And here's the thing. This is Congress's job to complete. My opponent, she continues to attack. She continues to spread lies throughout. This is about the district, the people of District 23. When she says her time in the military was a job, she's disconnected. She is a Washington bureaucrat that does not live here.
All right, let's move on. Let me address
that
again.
Go ahead, He's attacking my character. And look, my opponent was silent when this president, again, called our fallen heroes suckers and losers. He's had nothing to say in the face of reports that Russians have placed bounties on our service members' head in Afghanistan. Nothing to say when this administration failed to act in so many ways and making sure that our men and women have the resources that they need. So, again, Tony Gonzales is focused on getting himself to Congress. He will say, do anything to include defunding our military bases to build a border wall.
I'm going to let you get a quick word in.
I'll just say this. You haven't fun yet. There's a reason why she hasn't been in the district, right? And I think it's clear tonight.
All right, let's move on.
So let's be very clear, right? The San Antonio Express News already clarified and frankly pointed out that my opponent has been lying about this. And it's unfortunate because I know there's somebody at home right now that has lost somebody to COVID-19. Somebody at home right now trying to figure out how they're going to put food on the table, how they're going to pay their rent. And they tune in tonight to hear my opponent launching these baseless attacks, lies really. And we deserve better. We deserve, at the very least, somebody that is going to protect our pre-existing conditions, make sure everyone in this district has access to quality, affordable health care.
You are maintaining that you have been out campaigning in the district. It's been more than just Zoom calls.
My last in-person event was in March. Our medical experts have said we need to minimize activity outside of the home. We need to wear a mask. And I follow medical experts' advice. And look, Military City, USA had military doctors deployed here. That's how bad it was in our community. There are still some communities that still have a 15% positivity rate. And so we have been focused on connecting with voters, and I'm very proud of the work that we've done. I will always, though, prioritize the health of voters here, unlike my opponent doing these indoor maskless events, placing his political ambitions above our health and us opening up the economy safely and as rapidly as possible.
I will be very brief.
Yeah, please.
She just said out of her own words, she hasn't been active since March. We're in a global pandemic.
She didn't say she hadn't been active. She says she's been following the science.
Other than Zoom. Look, I appreciate Zoom just as much as the next person, but you can't Zoom your way to a food bank or a blood bank or sanitizer. This district deserves more than a virtual representative.
And you know what? Families deserve more help. And you know what? When my opponent was asked if they should get more help, he said we can't do that because they'll just stay at home and watch Netflix. So not only will he not help working families, but he also wants to insult them on top of that. So please, spare me.
I have to address that. Sorry. Look, I believe in another round of stimulus checks, right? I think that's important. Everybody is hurting. The President of the United States said, I will sign into law today if it got on my desk. Here's the thing. My opponent is backed by Nancy Pelosi.
All right, well, we got to move on. We're going to move on to the next campus question.
I would like to ask, what should be the federal government's response, if any, when the constitutional right of protest conflicts with the protection of private property?
Yeah, that's a question from Richard. We've seen the images and the videos from protesting. The vast majority, I want to point out, have been peaceful protests. But damaged buildings and the argument over protecting private property has also been raised. The question to both of you, what should the federal government's response be, if any, when the constitutional right of protest conflicts with the protection of private property? Gina Ortiz Jones, you get this question first.
So look, having taken the oath to support and defend our Constitution, I will always support somebody's right to peaceful protest. I don't support violence in any way, though, especially the destruction of property. I think we have to also address that when it comes to law enforcement, we know that the vast majority of cops show up every single day and do exactly what we want them to do, what they need to do, protect our communities. I think what we've also seen, though, with the unfortunate killing of George Floyd, is that not everyone is treated equally in our justice system. And so it's important that we make needed reforms to make sure that our communities are as safe as possible. I support doing this with law enforcement, making sure that our communities are as safe as possible.
Mr. Gonzales, your question. What should the federal response be, if any, when the freedom to protest conflicts with private property being damaged?
George Floyd should be alive today. And this is an issue in our country that we should come together and discuss, but we can't because we're so divided. We can't even have a civil discussion, right? I believe in the First Amendment. I served 20 years. I fought in 2 wars, and I believe in civil protest. That's good for our nation. But that's not what we're seeing. We are seeing chaos. And I'm proud to support law enforcement. I'm proud to be endorsed by the San Antonio Police Officers Association, to be endorsed by the El Paso Municipal Police, by the Eagle Pass police officers. My opponent supports defunding and demilitarizing our law enforcement. That is dangerous.
All right. I want to give you a chance to answer that.
I do not support defunding the police. My opponent knows this. Again, he continues to say and do whatever he thinks will get him to Congress. And he keeps talking about, not having unity in our country. Well, maybe it's because when asked if the KKK is a terrorist organization, he didn't have the courage to say it was. And again, we have to be very clear about how we work with law enforcement to make sure that our communities are as safe as possible.
All right, I want to get to closing statements. Okay. We could be going back and forth on this one, I know, for a long time, but it's time for closing statements. I appreciate both of your time. Each of you will have no longer than 2 minutes. Mr. Gonzales, you are first.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. I appreciate the people of District 23. I love this district. I am raising my family here. I traveled the district time and time again because I believe in this district. I will always fight for this district and put the district first, whether that's in Eagle Pass, whether that's in Del Rio, whether that's in El Paso, Fort Stockton, whether it's Winkler County. I will fight and protect you. I believe in the American dream. My life is the American dream. A year ago, I died. I praise God that he pulled me out of that and he has set me on my journey. I will always protect pre-existing conditions. It couldn't be more different, the two of us. I believe in the Second Amendment. She believes in taking guns away. I believe in the oil and gas industry. She believes in the Green New Deal. I believe in law enforcement. She believes in defunding. I believe in protecting the sanctity of life. My opponent believes in federal funding for abortions. Please, I ask you, help us win and push back against the Washington bureaucrats. Go to our website, TonyGonzalesForCongress.com. Follow us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Give us a call. 210-840-8202. Thank you for tuning in. God bless everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzales. Gina Ortiz-Jones, you have 2 minutes.
Steve, KSAT, thank you for hosting us. Thank you tonight for joining us from your home. And, my story starts over 40 years ago, and I know how important our country's example is. I look forward to protecting the opportunities that allowed me to grow up healthy, get an education, and serve our country. Those were opportunities I only had because our community and our country invested in me. I've lived the American dream, and my service to our country as an intelligence officer in the Air Force, deploying to Iraq, advising on operations all over Latin America, Africa, and then working in the Executive Office of the President. I've also been fortunate to see how important, how indispensable American leadership is. And as working families are struggling right now, it is so important we get our country back on the right track, and that starts with people having access to quality, affordable health care. You heard two very different visions for Texas tonight. My vision includes families having quality, affordable health care. My opponent completely failed to provide his plan to protect people with pre-existing conditions. He was asked repeatedly. He does not have a plan. He supports eliminating the ACA and its protections for people with pre-existing conditions. Again, he wants to roll back the clock and send us back to a time where you, as a COVID-19 survivor, as a cancer survivor like my mom, if you've got diabetes, if you've got asthma, insurance companies could deny you coverage, jack up your premiums only because you have a pre-existing condition. I have a plan to lower the cost of health care, expand access to health care. My opponent wants to do the opposite, and that is what this election is about. Thank you again for joining us today. We're just a couple of days away from the start of early voting next Tuesday. I respectfully ask for your vote. Health care is on the ballot. I hope you and your family continue to stay safe and healthy.
Let's go to thank you for your time. Let's go now to the early voting. Early voting starts Tuesday, October 13th, next Tuesday. Early voting ends on Friday, October 3rd. For complete election coverage, of course, we have it at KSAT.com, Vote 2020. That wraps up this debate. I want to thank both candidates and their respective campaigns for their cooperation throughout this process. I also want to thank Southwest Texas Junior College and Sul Ross State University for their time. But perhaps more than anything, I want to thank the people who shared their hopes and their fears with us tonight. Remember, Election Day is November 3rd. Your vote is your voice. From all of us at KSAT 12, good night, Uvalde.